Welcome to Beginner VBA. This course applies to both Excel and Access. Let's get started by first setting up our Excel file. Within an open Excel file, we want to go to File, select Options, then select the tab Customize Ribbon. Within it, we want to scroll down to where we see the developer checkmark and make sure that's enabled, then click OK. Now we need to save the file. Go to File, Save As, and make sure you select the file type Macro Enabled Workbook. Then enter a file name, and you're ready to start. Now that we've enabled macros in Excel by saving it as a file, we need to go to the Developer tab at the top. Click the Developer tab, then click Visual Basic. You'll be brought to the Visual Basic environment. If you're using Access, just click the Database Tools tab at the top and then click Visual Basic, and you're brought to the same environment. If you're in Excel, you may have more than one Excel file open. In this case, we have my file as well as another file that is not a macro file. Make sure you're on your macro-enabled file. Then, whether you're in Excel or VBA, go to the top, click Module, and you will begin your new VBA module. If you would like to set up your VBA environment like mine, make sure you click the link in the description on how to set it up. At a minimum, you will need to view the immediate window at the bottom. This is essential for VBA coding. If you want to just enable it, go to View, select the immediate window, and you will see the immediate window appear at the bottom. Now we're ready to begin coding. Anywhere in the window, click and type public sub hello. Then press Enter, and you'll notice that public sub is blue with hello being yellow if you've set up your environment. Now let's practice with a simple command. Type MsgBox and then hello world surrounded by quotes. Press your Enter key and you'll notice MsgBox is also yellow but hello world is white. Now let's run the new code we just created. In the immediate box, click there and type hello. Notice that is the same name as our sub. Press Enter. If you're using multiple monitors, it may be on another monitor, but if you drag it over, you'll see it says Hello World with a Microsoft Excel caption at the top of the window and an OK button. As it currently sits, that's not too useful, but if you go to the end of the Hello World and you press comma, you'll notice options appear. You'll notice there are many options on the list. You can either select one directly or start typing and it'll automatically find the closest match. For now, select VB, OK, Cancel. If you type another comma, you'll notice that it says the word title in brackets, meaning that's an optional thing you can type in. Let's type in hello there, end quote, then press Enter. Back in our immediate window, let's rerun hello to see what the effects are. Again, the window may be on another monitor. Now notice our caption has changed from Microsoft Excel to hello there, just as we had typed in. We still have hello world, and now we have two buttons, OK and Cancel. Now let's make things a bit more exciting. At the top of your sub, let's put in a variable. A variable is just something that holds value temporarily. At the top, start typing dim s caption as string. This tells VBA that we've made a variable called caption and it's a string or text. Notice that dim and as string are blue and s caption is yellow. Now let's set that variable value. Type s caption equals hello there and enclose that in double quotes. Notice how s caption is yellow but hello there is white, indicating plain text. Variables are very useful. Let's replace our old caption of hello there and put in its place the name of the variable sCaption. Now let's run the module. What do you think will happen? Notice our message box has the caption hello there that we've used from the variable sCaption. Here's a graphical depiction of what happened. Instead of using explicit option of hello there for the caption, we instead replaced that with a variable sCaption, which was equivalent to the same thing. What do you think will happen if we change the value of sCaption? Well, let's do that now. Highlight hello there and replace it with welcome. Now then, we've set the value of scaption to welcome, and we're still using scaption as our window caption. And look, it says welcome at the top instead of hello there. Now let's give ourselves a second string variable. We've got the first here. We could type underneath them smsg as string, or to save a little bit of space, we can just simply put a comma and then the name of the variable and its type without using the word dim. Now we have two string variables, scaption and smessage, and remember they're separated by a comma. Let's go ahead and set the value of smessage equal to hello world. Similar to how we did with caption, let's remove hello world, and in its place let's put in our new variable, smsg, not forgetting the comma. Now let's rerun our sub, and notice we have welcome at the top and hello world. Now let's look at our module. We've given ourselves two string variables, but we're not limited. We can take as many variables as we need. So let's type in a third with smessage2 as string. Let's set the value of smessage2 equal to glad you're here. If we now run the module, we'll notice we don't see glad you're here. That's because we didn't actually use the variable in anything. Well, we don't need variables hanging around if we're not going to use them, so let's put it to good use. Let's make yet another variable, smessage3, as string. Below smessage2, let's set the value of smessage3, but instead of normal text, we're actually going to combine smessage and smessage2 variables. We use the ampersand sign to concatenate or join string variables. Now we're going to move down to our MsgBox where the message normally appears and change that variable to smessage3. Now look, we've used smessage3, which is a combination of smessage and smessage2, but there's no space there and it looks kind of gnarly. One way to fix that is to go up to smessage, put a period and a space after it. Now let's rerun it, and now the text is much nicer. Here's a depiction of what's going on. At the top, again, we're using a variable scaption instead of explicitly typing a window caption. Additionally, instead of explicitly typing hello world, we're using a variable smessage3, which is really a combination of two variables, smessage and smessage2. Let's look at what we have so far. We have an smessage variable of hello world. We have an smessage2 variable of glad you're here, and then we combine in smessage3. But what if we want a line in between hello world and glad you're here? We can insert a VBCR command. Remember, we have to use the concatenate, so now it should read hello world, a line return or carriage return, and then glad you're here. And after we run it, we see now the message is on two different lines, hello world, glad you're here, because we inserted that carriage return in between both variables. Now strings are fun, but VBA can handle many more things than just strings. So underneath that line, let's give ourselves L apples as long, or basically a large integer number. Then underneath, let's set the value of L apples equal to 4, or whatever number you wish. Notice I did not put quotes around 4 because it is not a string. Only string variables get quotes. 4 is just a raw value. Now what happens if we append L apples to our smessage3 variable? What will the result be? Let's find out. We see that the number 4 was appended to the end of glad you're here, even though it was a string. So the number 4 is being treated like text. A 4 at the end of the message looks kind of strange. There are many ways to fix this. Here's one way. Let's give ourselves another variable, smessage4 as string. Now let's remove the L apples variable from the end of the smessage variable. Using our new smessage4 variable, let's see what we can do. We're going to say smessage4 equals L apples. Then we're going to append a carriage return, VBCR, and then we're going to append the variable smsg3. There are certainly more efficient ways to do this, but I'm showing you the power of variables and concatenation. Now, instead of displaying smsg3, let's use smsg4 and run it. If you're starting to get confused, don't worry. This takes lots of practice. Just realize you can start combining variables to create very complex messages or other items you may need in your programming. Things are starting to get a little messy, so let's do a bit of cleanup. Let's delete all of our string variables and maybe leave those 3. Now let's get rid of all this code and let's start fresh. Let's set some of the existing variables values. Scaption equals welcome. Then we're going to put smessage equals hello world. Now let's make smessage2 equal to you have. Reviewing, we have 3 string variables so far, scaption, smessage, and smessage2. But what about apples? Let's make apples equal to 4. Now you have options. Instead of creating one singular message with another variable, we can combine these variables right here at the first argument for MsgBox. We can put in smessage, concat, VBCR, concat, smessage2, concat, then let's put a space, let's concat lapples, and then another concat with apples itself. After we put a comma, let's give ourselves an OK and a cancel button, another comma, and then use our scaption variable as before. Let's try to predict what this will read. Smessage is hello world, then a line, you have, then a space, 4, and then the word apples with a caption of welcome. If we run the code, and there are our results. Let's take a look at what's happening. As before, we have the scaption variable at the top for the window caption. In the body of the text, we have the variable smessage. Then we concatenate a VBCR, which basically goes to the second line. Then we take smessage2, concatenate a single space, then concatenate the variable lapples, then concatenate the word apples. While you can certainly do this in code, it tends to get a bit messy. So let's give ourselves an smessage3 string variable again. Now we're going to set the smessage variable equal to smessage and VBCR and smessage2, append a space, and lapples, append another space, and then apples in quotes. Now we can replace this very large string here with that singular variable smessage3. Both ways are valid, but this is a bit easier to read in code. Now then, let's do a bit of cleanup and do something fresh. Let's give ourselves an lapples as long variable, comma, and then give ourselves another long variable, lbananas. Now let's remember to set those variables. I chose a value of 10 for apples, and let's say bananas, we have 5 of them. Now I want to do a bit more math, so let's give ourselves another variable. At the top, comma, total fruit as long. And then in the body of code, let's type total fruit equals 10 and, nope, ampersand is for string, plus lbananas. Now then, let's create a message box. MsgBox, you have, space, close the quote, concatenate, since we're making a string, total fruit, another concatenate, open quote, space, fruit, and then give ourselves a VBOK cancel, and then let's put in an explicit window caption. What happens if we run it? At the bottom, you have 15 fruit. Now, one reason we use the L or the S in front of variables is to keep them straight in code because sometimes code gets very complex. Let's give ourselves a variable of swelcome as string, and now let's set that variable value equal to welcome. Now, what do you think will happen if we try to add, using a plus sign, the swelcome to our LTotalFruit, which is a long variable? Well, let's find out. We're going to run. Notice our error, type mismatch. We've attempted to add a string to a long, which will not work. If we click debug, the VBA editor will highlight the faulty row. This highlight isn't always accurate, but gives you a good starting point. Now, what happens if we set the variable swelcome, instead of a word, we put quotes around and we put the letters or numbers 1, 0. Do you think it will still error out? Well, let's try it. Here you see that it was able to convert that text into a number, you have 25 fruit. Even though swelcome is a string, it looks like a number, so let's make it a word again to be very clear. Back to welcome. Now what happens if we try to append with an ampersand instead of a plus the swelcome? Again, we get the same error message because we're trying to append a string to a long variable. You should make it a point to practice on your own, and here's a practical exercise. Create a message box that says, welcome, you have X fruit, with X being a long variable, and the caption anything you want. The answers to this will be at the end of the video. You may be wondering, why are we using variables at all? Well, let's take a notional example. Say you work at a company, and for years the limit has been 10 items on whatever. And you have lots of code here where you're giving the user a message box. Are you sure you are limited to 10 items? Maybe lots of code in between. You confirm again, lots of code in between, and then the last warning, you are limited to 10 items. And then you get a new boss in, and they say the limit is 15 items. Had you coded the module like this, you would have to find every instance of 10 and manually change it to 15. Now let's say you are a bit smarter programmer and you use a variable LMaxLimit. Now you only have to change LMaxLimit in one location, at the top. Now let's look at functions. Functions are like subs, but they return values. To do a function, type public function, let's give it a name, SumFruit. Notice how I gave the function SumFruit a data type very similar to how we do a variable. In this case, SumFruit will return a long value. Let's make a ridiculously simple function and just make SumFruit equal to 15. Like a variable, we have to set the value of the function somewhere in the code. Replace the value of LTotalFruit with the results from SumFruit, and now what do we have as a result? 15 fruit. Now, a hard-coded function of a value 15 isn't very useful, but similar to the message box, how we can pass it arguments, we can pass arguments to SumFruit. So let's do that now. Let's type in two arguments we're going to pass, fruit1 as long and fruit2 as long. Now we see that SumFruit returns a long, and it is also passed two long values. It's expecting to be passed two values when SumFruit runs. Now, SumFruit is going to add the passed arguments, fruit1 and fruit2 together. Notice in our code, LTotalFruit is already calling SumFruit, but what happens if we try to run it right now? We get an error message saying the argument is not optional. SumFruit is expecting two different fruit values to be passed, fruit1 and fruit2. So now let's do that now. We put in parentheses two values. We're going to pass it apples and the value for bananas, which are variables. Now what do you think will be returned? There we have it. SumFruit added the two passed arguments, bananas and apples, and since SumFruit returns a value, LTotalFruit was set to that value. Here's a graphical depiction of what's happening. The function is expecting two inputs, fruit1 and fruit2. Next, it performs some logic, in this case, simply adding the two inputs together. Finally, the function itself is set to the value of this operation, SumFruit. Here's a practical exercise to help you. Write a function called rtnText that accepts two string arguments. The function will concatenate the two arguments with a single space in between. The function returns a string. Now here's a possible answer to our first practical exercise where we're creating a message box that has a variable in its message. First, I want to give myself an x variable as a long. Let's set that x equal to a value, say 500. It doesn't really matter in this case. Now we're going to use the message box, quote, welcome, you have, space, end quote, concatenate the x, concatenate fruit. Can give ourselves VB OK only. There's our OK only. And then we can give it whatever caption we wish. And then when we run it, oops, that's because I had renamed the sub practical1, yet I tried to run hello, which doesn't exist. So let me rename and try to run practical1. And there's our result. For practical exercise number 2, where we had to write a function called rtnText that accepts two string arguments, here is a possible solution. We start with public function rtnText. Now we open the parentheses because we're passing it two arguments, string 1 is string, string 2 is string. You can name these anything. I named them string 1 and 2, and remember the function has to return a value, in this case a string. Now we're going to set rtnText, which is the name of the function, equal to string 1 with a single space in between, so concatenate, a single space, concatenate string 2, and there we have it. Now let's call this function in code up here in practical 2. First, let's give ourselves a variable, smsg, which is a string. Now let's set smsg equal to the return value of that function and pass it two strings, hello and world. Now we can type in MsgBox, put in the variable smessage, which is equal to the output of that function, VBOK cancel, whatever title we want for the caption, and when we run it, there we have it. Thanks so much for watching. If you consider this useful, please consider subscribing to be up to date on all of the latest videos.